Welcome, good afternoon. I am Desti Holman-Sprague. I'm the Executive Director of the Maine Women's Lobby Education Fund. And I also want to introduce Logan. Logan, if you want to say hi.
Hi everybody, my name is Logan. I am the Community Organizer and Office Manager at the Maine Women's Lobby Education Fund. And I'm so excited to see so many of you in your Girls' Day t-shirts. Like I said before, if you haven't gotten a Girls' Day t-shirt, shoot me an email. I'm the one who's been emailing you all and your parents, all the time. So just reach out to me and we can do our best to get you one. But so excited to see all of you.
Great, thanks Logan. We've been planning Girls' Day for months, of course, and it's been so much fun. As soon as we had to cancel, we kind of knew, like, we are not giving up on Girls' Day one way or another. It took us a couple weeks to try to figure out what we were going to do next. But I'm actually really excited about what we have for you. It's not the same as being at the State House, but in some ways there are things that are cool about having a virtual Girls' Day that we would not have been able to do otherwise. Like, we kind of get to go behind the scenes more. To talk about committee life and what it's like when you're chairing committees, to talk with the House clerk. So there's lots of really interesting information, both today during the live session, and then I will show you at the end of our time today where you can go find all the rest of the materials that we have for you. There's hours of content, probably even more than you even want or will be able to get through. Before we jump in, I want to just take a couple of minutes to talk about housekeeping and how we will spend our time during this 2 hours. Because we have kind of a large group, we want everybody to be able to engage, but unfortunately it's hard to have, verbal conversation. So we're going to ask you to use the chat function. I'm guessing that most of you have been Zooming like more than you ever wanted to Zoom before for the last couple of months. So you probably know the ins and outs of Zoom. For some people who don't, if you go down to the bottom of your screen, you'll see a little toolbar and there's a chat function there. So you can just click in onto the chat function and click on everyone. And there you go. You can chat your questions right in that box. Logan is going to keep an eye on the questions. And so that way, if you have questions, he is the person that's going to be making sure that they're read out loud. You can also chat directly to Logan if you have any technical issues or if you're confused or you need some help. So I'll kind of be running things and Logan is the back end helper. So any questions can go straight to him, either privately or to the group. The other thing I want to let you know is that, let's see, you're all muted. If you need to stop your video, that's okay. We're not going to stop for breaks during this 2 hours. So go ahead and take care of your own needs. If you have to hop up to use the restroom, grab a glass of water, totally up to you. Nobody will notice. That's cool. You can also use the little reactions. If you want to say, yeah, clap in, good job, Kelly, who's going to be our first speaker. You can do a thumbs up, yeah. So if we need agreement, and you can also pop things over in the chat bar as well. So that's some basic housekeeping. And you should also know that we are being recorded. So if you don't want your video on this, you can go ahead and click your video off if that's a problem for you. So we'll be showing this on our website, so people will be able to access the video of it. So without further ado, I wanted to hop over and do a quick little look at who is in the room. So I'm going to take, I'm going to pop a link in the chat bar and ask that you take just a quick second. If you have a browser, So you can't, this is not a live link, so you have to copy and paste. But you can copy and paste this polleverywhere.com at Maine Women's Lobby and go over to your browser and click in there the county that you live in so that we can see who we have in the Zoom room. If you're too close to the county borders, it gets confused. So go near your county name because it's not as smart as we are. So just take a couple minutes, go ahead and click on over there and then come on back to this screen. And then I'm going to show us who we have in the room. Ooh. Oh yeah, Rustic, way to go up in the county. Got some. Oop. I just realized I'm going to share my screen and head on over here. And there you go. You should be able to see. Look at everybody coming in. A bunch of Penobscot. We've got York County, Franklin, Somerset. I think we only have 4 middle schools in Piscataquis. So we don't have a lot of Piscataquis representation, but maybe next time we'll have to work harder to reach out there. All right, take a couple more minutes. That is awesome. Yay, I'm so excited to see where everybody's from. This is great representation from Maine, so hooray. All right, if you haven't yet, you still can, and we'll go ahead and share that after this to all of our participants. All right, so let's kick it off. Thanks for participating in that. And now we are going to hear quickly from our Maine governor, the first female governor for the state of Maine, which is super exciting. And hear from Governor Janet Mills. Oh, all right. I'm getting the memo that folks can't hear. That is a bummer. Here's what I'm going to do so I can fix that. I don't know how, we tried it already this morning and it worked out, but I'm going to go ahead and pop this in. This is a live link, so why don't we just take a minute? It's a 2-minute, and you can go ahead and click on that link. We won't be able to hear you. I'm going to go ahead and play it so that we know how long it is, and then you can watch it. I'm sorry that we're not able to sort of watch it together, but go ahead and take 2 minutes and we'll hear from Governor Janet Mills. All right. All right, everyone. Give me a thumbs up if you made it through Governor Mills. Okay, I've got a bunch of thumbs up. So sorry about that. I don't know. You know, you try to get all this tech to work. We even set up an IGTV yesterday, but there's always going to be something, right? All right, and I see that for some folks weren't able to watch the video. I'm so sorry about that, but that entire video will be available to you just as soon as Girls' Day is over, or this kickoff is over. I'm going to show you where you can go find that and so much more. So let's move on to our first session. I am thrilled to introduce Kelli McCannell. She's the Executive Director of Hardy Girls, Healthy Women, which is one of the most exciting kind of leadership organizations that I have had the privilege of seeing in the last couple of years. I just absolutely love everything that Kelli and Hardy Girls is getting up to. And I want to hang out with them every day. So I'm glad that we can hang out with them this day. And Kelli's going to talk to us a bit about like why activism and why advocacy. Kelli, I'm going to turn it over to you. And if you need any support from Logan or I during your 45 minutes, then, or, you know, or however long we have, 50 minutes, let me know. And we are happy to help. But otherwise, over to you.
All right, thank you. Good. I was about to say good morning because who knows what day or what time it is these days, huh? Good afternoon. I'm excited that this is happening. I'm going to try to share my screen, and hopefully I can do that. Can you see that? Okay. So I get a thumbs up from Logan. All right, so as Dusty said, we are Hardy Girls, Healthy Women. So our mission is that we take girls seriously and put the power in their hands, your hands, to challenge a society that ignores your brilliance. And we dare adult allies to join us in standing with girls. So you need to know right off the bat that your secret is out. I know that you are all brilliant, and I'm going to call on your brilliance today, and we're going to cause a ruckus together. And a ruckus doesn't mean that you need to be marching down the street, holding a sign, yelling about things, although that's really fun too. It can be anything from, you know, when someone says something negative about you in school, you let it roll off your back. A ruckus is called disrupting the norm. So whatever feels like normal in society, whatever people try to tell you is what's right, and like, this is what's normal, you're being weird or whatever, ignoring that is causing a ruckus. So that's our vision for girls, for all of you. So again, we need to rely on your brilliance. What we consider your brilliance is a whole lot of things, but mostly your opinions, your experiences, and your relationships. So part of what makes up your identity also makes up your brilliance. These are just some of the things that go into your identity. There's a whole lot more, whether you're on a sports team or, you know, how many kids are in your family, if there's any. And so these are just some of the elements, but this is also such a huge part of your brilliance. And this is what makes your thoughts and experiences and opinions so important, because nobody else has this combination of brilliance that you do. So I know, as Dusty said, you've been on Zoom a lot and seeing quiz time. You're probably like, why am I on here and why did this lady get invited? But don't worry, there is no grading. You turn nothing in and you're not expected to know any of the answers. So we're just going to have fun with it. So let's start with movies. I want you to just guess. You can put them in chat if you'd like, or just like think out loud what you think the answers to these might be. And again, unless you're like a crazy robot Google head, there's no way that you would know these answers. So you're totally guessing. So when we look at the top movies of 2018, the top grossing movies means the ones that made the most money. What is the number of films that had a female lead or co-lead? Any ideas? So for the first one, actually, let's go through all of them and then we'll show the answers just to keep the suspense going because I know you're hanging on pins and needles here. Okay, number 2, the percentage of speaking roles in films that were female. Because I don't know if any of you know girls and women who like to speak, but I do. And so let's see how movies portray that. And then the percentage of writers, directors, cinematographers. That's one of those words that not a lot of people are familiar with. So that's basically the person that kind of holds the camera and shows you what is actually going to make it on screen. The executive producers, those are the people with the money. They read a whole ton of scripts that somebody writes, a lot of guys, and then they say, this movie sounds good, I'm going to give you money to make it. So those are the executive producers, and the editors are decide who kind of what makes it on the screen. So we're looking at the percentage of all of those combined. And then if we look at the entire history, not just 2018, the entire history of American film, there's been about 165 movies that had fictional presidents in them. I counted this last year, so there may have been a couple more movies this year that I didn't get in there, but I don't think the numbers changed that much. So let's check out these answers together. Usually I'm having you shout them out in person, but we'll pretend we're doing that. So you can just shout in your living room. All right. So the number of films that featured a female lead or co-lead was 40, which is not bad. Out of 100 movies, it's 40%. That number has gone up a lot, but obviously not up to half. What about speaking roles? So only about 35% of the speaking roles in film were female. And of those, only about 31% of them were actually women of color. So a third are women of color and a third are female. And these do go along in that male-female binary that I don't totally believe in, but that's how statistics are being collected. And slowly we're kind of changing to represent a whole spectrum of gender. But right now, that's why these are kind of man, women, girl, boy statistics. All right, so here's this one. 16%. That varies a little bit across each of the things that we listed, the cinematographers and all of that, but on average it's about 16%, which is pretty low. And there's, of the writers, there's 73% of them have no female writers. So the movies that don't have a female writer, 73% of those have none at all. And the entire history of American film, 165 movies of fictional presidents, there's 3 that were played by women. And this is just looking at movies. It's not looking at TV and stuff. So we're going to talk a little bit more, or I'm going to talk and you're going to do thumbs up and reactions and things a little bit more, but we're going to have another page of numbers for you first. All right, so let's go into media and businesses. Op-eds, so that's when people write opinion letters to the editor, and those are posted by people that are kind of like experts, and the editors decide this is someone that people should hear from. So the percentage of op-eds that were written by women, we'll just do these one at a time this time, 20%. So that's 1 in 5 opinion letters to the editor that are written by women. And again, I don't know about you, but I know a lot of women with opinions. I am one of them. Dusty is another. And so, but this is what is being published in America's newspapers. And this is where we need to go back to your brilliance, because you've all got opinions. And why aren't we getting those in the newspaper? When we look at Fortune 500 companies, so that's just a term that means like the biggest companies that make the most amount of money. So like Pepsi and other things that you've heard of like that. The major earners, the people that are like the CFOs and the CEOs and all the initials that are way up there, and we always wonder, what does that even stand for and what do you do? They are the major earners, and 8% of those are women. When you look at the CEOs, which is the presidents of the companies, only 5% of those are women. If we go into advertising, Creative directors, so those are the people that kind of decide what goes into commercials and campaigns, and like when you go on social media and you see an ad for something, the creative director is the ones that kind of oversee that whole thing. And so women control 80% of consumer spending and 60% of social media sharing. So you'd think they've got a pretty big piece of commercial sales and what people who are trying to advertise to. But the percentage of advertising creative directors is only 11. And that is after years and years and years of that number only being 3%. And they started a movement called the 3% movement, where they basically tried to hike that up. So that number has gone up quite a bit in the past few years, and it's still at 11. So when you look at law firms, and actually if you think about a lot of the commercials you've seen, especially ones for like even razors for women and things, you kind of can suspect they are not designed by women. We don't look like that. We don't do those things with razors, all kinds of stuff. So start paying attention to those commercials and you can like, yeah, I can see that. Nobody wrote that. Okay, so for law firms, women are earning 47% of law degrees, but if they're being made partners, and partners are the people that have like the names in the title of the law firm, so it's like McCannell, Westcott, and Graves or whatever, those people are the partners. So women are only 19% of partners in law firms. This is the final slide of numbers, I promise. All right, let's go up to government. So women representing how much of the United States House and Senate. And these numbers, again, have gone up a little bit in the past, during the past election in 2018, but they're still quite low. So we were at 20% before, and now we're up to 25, which is still only 1 in 4. And another number that went up in the past one, we used to be at 6 for female governors, and now we're at 11. But again, that's 11 out of 50. So still pretty low down there. And the Office of Supreme Court Justices, those are the highest judges in the country, and they are lifetime appointments. There's been 119 Supreme Court justices since the Supreme Court was started. How many women have there been total? 4. And 3 of them are on right now. And normally I hand out chocolate if anybody can name who the Supreme Court justices are. So if you can name them and you have chocolate in your house, you should reward yourself. But they are RBG, Ruth Bader Ginsburg, Sandra Day O'Connor, Sonia Sotomayor, and Elena Kagan. And finally, let's look at, well, how much % of the population is made up of women? Because maybe these numbers seem funky, but maybe we're only 10% or 20% or whatever the population. Wah, wah. Nope, we're more than that. So I want you to take a minute to think about, how do you feel about these numbers? And why did I hop on this computer to show depressing things to you this afternoon when you're supposed to be at this exciting advocacy-filled Girls' Day at the State House? One of the things we talked about, if you can think of what do these numbers have in common with each other, and what difference does it make? Because these are just people writing movies, and you probably don't come into contact with these people very much in your everyday life unless you have like relatives in Los Angeles or something. And so what does it matter? Who cares? Well, these people are writing our stories. And I don't know if I can click on chat. Can I see your chats? Oops, I distracted myself, sorry. So those people are writing our stories. If you think about the closest male in your life, whether that's your brother or your father or a good friend or a cousin, whoever it is, and you ask that man or boy to tell your life story, would it be accurate? Would they get all the details of your experience as a girl or as a female identifying person in this world? The answer is probably no. And that's like your favorite guy. That's the guy who should know you the best. And so when we look at Hollywood, and then in laws that are being written and laws that are being passed and opinions that are being shared, if they're majority from men, is it showing the full picture? So it's not to say that those things are bad or negative. It's just that it's not a complete picture of what we would actually want to be hearing from folks. So when I started off, I said that our name is Hardy Girls, Healthy Women. And that is based on hardiness. And it's a whole developmental psychology concept that I sort of understood when they interviewed me. But really what made it fit was when I looked at a gardening metaphor. So have any of you ever planted anything in your life, whether it survived or not? Anybody? Thumbs up? Okay. So if you get a packet of seeds, there's directions on those seeds, right? And the packet will probably tell you how much to space between the seeds, when you can plant them, how much sunlight, how much water, all those details, right? And those details are the hardiness zone for that plant, for that seed. So if you read those directions and then you're like, meh, how important can that be? Just dirt, right? And you chuck it into the forest, maybe like a sunflower. Sunflowers are pretty hardy, so they might grow anywhere. But say a sunflower and you chuck it in the forest and there's lots of shade and it's really wet out there. What's going to happen to that seed? Probably nothing, right? It might grow. And if it grows, it's probably going to look like this sad little flower on this side. So then what you're going to do is you're going to go out to the woods and you're going to bend down and you're going to be like, come on, seed, you can do it. Just shove those roots down and, you know, kind of perk up, grow a little bit, find the sun. Maybe if you put a little bit of pollen on your petals, then people want you in their bouquet, but not too much pollen because then you're kind of, you know, out there. If you could shove your stem a little straighter, then maybe you might work it. Was that what you would do to seeds? Now you're thinking I'm even crazier than I was before, right? When I made you take the quiz? No, you wouldn't say that to seeds, but how many times have you heard something like that said to you? That if you could smile more or have a little bit more confidence in what you do, or maybe if you didn't take things so seriously, you know, you're being extra sensitive or something like that. All these little sort of tips for you to grow better. But that's totally ignoring your hardiness zone. You're being chucked into the woods. You're chucked into this soil that's made up for guys because they're the other ones they're making those decisions and writing the stories. And to be honest, it's usually heterosexual, on the wealthier side, white guys too. So that takes away whole other parts of our identities. So when you're put in their soil, no wonder we're not growing as much as we want to be growing. But the cool part about it is that we can be our own gardeners and we can be gardeners for each other. And that's a lot of what activism and advocacy is being gardeners for yourself and for others and for our communities. So you're here today to talk about public policy, which who knows what that is. I had to Google it when they originally asked me to do a presentation several years ago. And so it's not letting me go. There we go. So here's technically, if you Google it, this is the exact words that come up for that. What does that mean? It basically means, this is the public part of it, but there's policies at your schools, right? There's policies on dress codes, there's policies on tardiness, there's policies on all of these things. So that's your local school-wide policy. When you go public policy, that just means the things that kind of we all have to listen to, whether in your city or your state or your country. Those are the public policies that those social laws that we go by. So again, what does this have to do with you? Well, there's a whole process to public policy where I won't just read through these things, but you can look at, so if we've only got, let's think about if we've got white men for the most part, not all, but in this process, and they're identifying problems, are they going to think of the things that matter to you? So let's go back to your school and think about dress code, for instance. Like our guys, are they subject to the same sort of questions and monitoring and policing that you are? And maybe they are. We've heard from a lot of schools that girls feel like they're not, that they kind of have to go by different rules, and it's weird to have teachers looking at your shoulders or judging your skirt length or whatever the issue is. But your guy friends may not know that. And so if they were to say, like, what are some of the problems at our school? They might not say, you know what? Girls in my classroom don't like it when teachers look at their shoulders. So we need everyone involved in that problem identification stage. And when you go around the whole way, if they don't really understand the problem, how are they going to come up with a solution for it? So this is another one of those ways that we are creating our own soil, and we're modifying that and saying, here's the things that I need in that soil. Here's the things that I need in this environment to really feel like I can grow and be healthy here. And again, that doesn't mean that there's anything wrong with the guys that they don't know that we need tampons in the bathrooms, or, you know, there's all these other issues. They just wouldn't think of it because they don't have uteruses that bleed every month. So why would that occur to them? They probably try not to think about it. So this is why we need everybody involved. When you go back to that brilliance, back to your identity, we need everybody involved in that process so we're not missing out on those problems that we could either stop or prevent. And that's what policies are doing, is they're kind of saying, hey, this is a problem and we need to come up with a solution for it, or this might be a problem, so let's stop it before it starts. So now we're gonna do, I guess it's technically another quiz, but I showed you the first one was fun, right? So do thumbs up or thumbs down if you think that these are laws, real laws that were on the books in cities around our country. So say thumbs up for yes, this is a true law, and thumbs down for false. It was illegal for women to swear. Yeah. I'm seeing some thumbs up. True. And this is still on the books in Utah. So sometimes there's laws that get passed and like they don't really enforce them anymore. And so they're technically still on the books. So that's what I mean when I say that this is still, it's still technically illegal for women to swear in Utah. I don't know that they're spending police time on this, but it's out there. They could if they wanted to. What about it was illegal for women to wear pants? Thumbs up for true, thumbs down for false. Yep, Tucson, it's still on the books there. So hopefully it's legal for women to wear shorts in Tucson because it's really hot there, but it's hard to say. Okay, this is a fun one. Illegal for women to drive a car without her husband waving in front of her, waving a red flag. Sounds silly, right? True or false? True, false. I bet you can guess. True. This is in Memphis and some cities in Virginia. So literally a man running 10 feet in front of the car, waving a red flag, being like, watch out, the lady's driving. Don't get too close. Your life is in danger. Okay, so here's another one. These are a little bit more serious. It's legal to take up the skirt pictures in public spaces. So if someone had a cell phone and you were bending or something and someone could take their cell phone and take a picture in a public space, do you think that's legal? Thumbs up for yes, thumbs down for no. This is in Georgia, and I would like to say that this is one of those old crazy laws, but this law was passed within the last 5 years because this happened and someone said, hey, that's messed up. Nobody should be able to take a picture up my skirt. And so they went to court, and court's like, well, you're in a public space, so that's what happened. Children can be allowed to get married with parent permission or waivers. True or false? I see some thumbs up. True. So the federal limit is 18, but states can make their own rules. So up to 24,000 youth a year, mostly girls, are getting married, and some of them as young as 10. So I'm guessing that most of you are older than 10. Do you think right now that you should be able to just get married and have that permanent decision happening in your life? Maybe some of you have people you really like, so maybe it feels like that. But I know looking back at myself when I was 10, I wasn't even close to that. All right, and our last one, Rapists have parental rights to child custody. So that would mean if someone was assaulted and they ended up getting pregnant and having that child, then the person who assaulted them would have rights to be able to see that child. True or false? True. So in 7 states in our country, this is what's going on. And so I put these laws on here because some of them are kind of funny, and some of them are very not funny. And even the funny ones are not funny in that they're trying to control women's bodies and women's outfits and women driving. And so I think about these laws and think, if we go back to those numbers in the beginning of how many women are in city council or governors and lawyers and all of these things, if those were even numbers, if those were at 50%, I find it really hard to believe that most of these laws would have been passed. I think they were trying to address some problems or legality or whatever it is, and they never talked to the people that were being affected by these. And that's one of the hardest parts of policy and advocacy, is when people think they're doing something good. So not all people are going for the good, but people think they're doing something good and they don't get enough input. They don't get enough information. They don't get your brilliance to create the good policies. So when you are talking to, on the panels that come up next, when you're talking to the women in our state who are making laws, you are not a kid that they are entertaining for an afternoon and telling you how cool it could be to run for office and how much fun. You are one of their constituents. You are somebody that they answer to. You are partially their bosses. And so you have special information that only you know, that brilliance, and they need it because they need to make good policies for you. And unless they have your brilliance, they can't do that. So I want to end, I've got, I think, like 5 more minutes, on a good note of what you can do. So some of these people you might not recognize, some of these people you might. So Malala is one of those that you might recognize. She started causing a ruckus at a very young age, age 11, and she really suffered from it. She had acid thrown in her face, but she was believing in girls' education, and she kept going. I'm not sure if any of you recognize Nicole Maines, but she was in the 3rd grade in Maine. She is a transgender woman who now is in Hollywood, and she played the first transgender superhero in a show, which was pretty exciting. And she just wanted to use a bathroom that made sense for her when she was in the 3rd grade. And people said, nope, that's weird. That's not part of the norm. And she was like, I think I'm going to cause a ruckus because I just want to pee. And so her family rallied behind her, and they got the laws changed. And so now kids in the state of Maine can use the bathroom that makes the most sense for them and feel safe when they're just trying to go pee. Julia HANSEN is another awesome Mainer. She started causing a ruckus in high school. There was some mental illness, mental health issues that were going around at her high school, and a couple of her friends actually committed suicide. And she was devastated. You know, she lost these best friends in her life, and she wasn't sure what to do with that. And so she said, you know what, we need to talk about it. Instead of just kind of hiding it away on our own, we need to talk about it. So she started the Yellow Tulip Project, which may be at some of your high schools or some of your middle schools and high schools. And it's just basically getting people to talk more about mental illness and kind of disrupt that stigma around it, that we should just suffer alone and not listen to other people. And then there's Greta. One of my favorite stories about Greta is that she started going to cause a ruckus at 15. She'd leave every Friday and go sit in front of the government in her city and say, you know, justice for climate, and we need people paying attention to climate change. And for about a year, everybody thought she was super weird. They thought she was like the weirdest kid, and they're like, why isn't she in school? Her classmates thought she was weird. It was not like she was this cool activist that everyone was like, oh my God, Greta, I want to be like her. And they were like, you're strange. Why are you doing that? Get back to school. And then all of a sudden, a camera showed up and they started covering her story. And everybody's like, hey, this girl's brilliant and she knows a whole hell of a lot. and maybe we could all do something with her. And you just had that march, that climate march last March, maybe? It might have been in March. Anyway, there was the climate march all around the country, inspired by Greta and inspired by many young people who are doing that. So when you want to cause a ruckus, you may be considered weird for a while, but that does not mean you're crazy. It means that you're still brilliant and people just haven't gotten there yet. Simone Biles is a started causing ruckus in 2011. She is a gymnast who is incredible, and people tried to kind of dismiss her and say that she wasn't in there, and she was like, you know what, I'm going to give 100% in what I do, and I'm going to be awesome at it. And people are like, oh, she's so cocky, and she's like, no, I'm just talented, and I'm brilliant, so there. So I know there's lots of other people that you can think of. We have a brilliant series going on. If you're on Instagram, you can follow us and learn about a lot of other brilliant people. And now I want you to think about what you care about and what is that thing that you're willing to be a little bit weird over and willing to sit outside of government for and to protest for a while and tell people that it matters to you. There's a video that you can look up that's really fun, and it's talking about how to become a leader. And you think that it's going to talk about confidence and all types of those like special skills that people say you need. But really it's just a guy that goes out and starts dancing to a song. And at first the guy's kind of weird because he's at a concert and he's just like, yeah, on a hill dancing to the song, and everybody's like, oh, that guy's super weird. But then as soon as one other person comes and joins the guy, then people are like, oh. And then so once you have a follower, then you're technically a leader. That's a leader dancing out there at a concert. And then all these people start rushing, and then suddenly the guy is in the middle of this crowd and they're all dancing and having a super fun time, when in the beginning he was kind of a weirdo. So what are you willing to be kind of a weirdo about and share with people that you care about? And what can you do? So one thing you can do, obviously, you're already doing. You're participating in this day. You can wear your shirt proudly. You can follow up on the resources that they hand out. You can say, like, this doesn't make sense to me. This isn't interesting to me, but I love this part of it, or I really love this part of it. Dusty did a whole panel with lobbyists before, and I just caught part of the question was, you know, you have to be really outgoing and you're kind of shy, and so how could you get up and talk in front of people? And it's like, there's parts of it that you don't even have to talk in front of people, and there's so much of it is like not chit-chatting, because I hate chit-chatting and I never want to go to networking events and have to be like, what's your name, where are you from, all of those things. Like, that physically pains me, and I'd much rather be sitting on my bed reading. But when I get to talk about hardy girls, healthy women, and like girls' brilliance and all that stuff, like, look how excited I get. So just look into those things and don't discount them. Because a lot of times it's not that people, women aren't winning when they run for office. Women actually win at about the same rate that men do when they run for office. Just way less women are running. So if you think that you're not qualified to run for your school office, for a place on your school board, wherever you can run for, think about the guy that was sitting next to you in your class, in whatever class. That's who's going to run. And is he more qualified than you to be in there? Maybe he is. Maybe he's a super smart guy. But maybe he doesn't have, or actually, I know he doesn't have the same brilliance that you have. So he might be able to pass some really cool policies at your school, but is he going to get your life experience and your friend's life experience and policies that really affect that? So that's what you can do, is start looking at running for office, and don't let them tell you that you as the seed are not growing the way you're supposed to, because our soil is really funky, and we can change that together. So here's some other ideas. Use that brilliance of yours. Know Your 9 is a great resource. There's a Title IX is a law that's passed, and it was basically equal opportunity in education. So it goes into athletics and tech and sexual harassment and all these things. And the website's just Know Your 9 if you want to look that up. Speak up when you feel like it's safe to do so. Register to vote. Join a club that's doing something that you like. Remember, if there's people in that club that started off and people are like, oh, they're kind of the weirdos. Well, you know what? Be a weirdo. They're the funnest. Start a new club if you can't find one. If one of these isn't at your school yet, you can say, hey, this is something I'm interested in. I want to start that. Volunteer, write your legislators. And again, you're sort of their bosses. You don't get to fire them, but you get to not vote for them again once you can vote, and you can urge other people to not vote. So you can say, hey, this is important to me. I need you to pay attention. It's also important to 50 of my closest friends. Guess what? We're going to be voting in a little bit. You might want to start listening to us now. Reading books, there's experiences that you don't have, but you can just read a book if you feel uncomfortable talking to someone or asking the questions. I read tons of books all the time, and I'm like, oh, that's what's going on with that person's culture or their religion or their abilities or whatever it is. And the most important thing, question the media, because what you were seeing is created by, all together now, older white dudes. So again, they're not bad, but they're not us or you or them, or they don't have your brilliance. So every time you see the commercial, every time you see those things, be like, who made this and why? What are they trying to get me to do? And finally, my last plug is that we have a girls advisory board. And this is for girls who are in 9th through 12th grade, self-identifying girls and gender expansive folks. And so if you're going into 9th grade next year, we would love to have you apply. You can go to our website and all this information will be provided and all of that. But we would love to have you on a girls advisory board, and that you work with this awesome group of girls, and you get to work with middle schoolers and get them all riled up and mad about all these things too. And you get to change the soil together. So thank you so much for letting me be on here, and let's go out and garden together.
Yay. Big round of applause. Thank you so much, Kelly.
Yeah, that's so fun. I need to look at the chats now. You guys are great.
Oh, you gotta go back through the chats, because the chats were bringing it this whole time. So
Yay.
I'm super psyched. We kept our eyes peeled for any like questions that came up. I didn't see a lot, but you know, you can definitely reach out to us with questions. You know, after this, our information is available. I'm sure Kelly's happy to hear from you. And I see some Snap groups. Like, we actually have a Girls' Day Facebook group, so we can definitely, like, there are lots of ways that folks can come together with our organization, with Kelly's. So anyway, I'm so glad we could do this.
Yeah, and there's only like 2 or 3 of us that work at Hardy Girls, so if you reach out to Hardy Girls, you'll find me. They'll know who I am. So you can just say that lady that talked on the Zoom screen, and they would find me. It doesn't have to be a formal thing, but I hope to see you all interacting on Instagram if you're on there, on Facebook. It's never too young to start, because if you think now that people don't really want to hear your voice, you're probably going to hold on to that for the rest of your life. And that's a heavy, unnecessary thing to hold on to, because again, you're brilliant, and we want that brilliance happening now. We need to see it now, and then you're just gonna like blaze through the rest of it and creating that different soil for everyone.
Yes. Yeah. And brilliance is like a muscle. Like, you've already got a whole bunch of it, and the more you exercise it, like, the bigger and more fabulous it'll get. So.
Right.
All right. So I am going to, we're going to slide over next to hear some stories from other brilliant women who have taken the plunge, who have decided to run for office, to put themselves out, and who have won their elections. And there are also pretty young women too, which we're really excited about. Because it's such a cool scene to see, like, young women out there doing it. So I probably over to our panel, just a little bit of housekeeping, as you probably know, but up in the top right-hand corner, there's a speaker view. And you can switch to, if you click on the speaker view, then you can change how you're seeing it, because we will have 4 different people talking during the panel. You're welcome to look at the whole array of folks, but if you click on speaker view, whoever is talking is the one whose face you're going to see. So totally up to you. Okay, so without further ado, I am thrilled to introduce our speakers. We have District Attorney Natasha Irving. Hey.
Hi.
She represents the Mid-Coast, and I'm going to let her, of course, introduce herself when we go around. We have City Councilor from Lewiston, Safiya Khalid. So hello, welcome, give us a wave. And we have State Representative Chloe Maxmin. Haven't seen Chloe yet on our thing. Representative Maxmin, are you here with us? All right, well, she may be having technical difficulties, but we can go ahead and get started with, sorry, we'll go ahead and get started with DA Irving and Councilor Khalid, your official titles. And if you don't mind, and you should both be, I see that you're unmuted, Natasha and Safiya. Okay, now you're unmuted too, so wonderful. Maybe Safiya, let's go ahead and start with you. If you just want to introduce yourself, tell us what a city councilor does and how long you have been in your role.
Hello everyone, good afternoon. Thank you so much for having me. I feel very honored to be part of this group today. Yeah, so I'm a recently elected city councilor for the city of Lewiston. So I got elected of November 2019, and I took office of January 6th of 2020 this year. And my job is I basically pass laws and for the city of Lewiston. So from developments to construction to projects that needs to happen. If there's, problems, if a constituent, a member of the community is having a problem, then that's what I, with 6 other people, I'm the 7th person that we do that with.
All right, wonderful, thank you. And DA Irving, if you want to introduce yourself and talk about what a DA does.
Thank you so much. Yeah, I'm Natasha Irving. I'm the District Attorney in Prosecutorial District 6. So that is Saginaw, Lincoln, Knox, and Waldo counties. And you may have seen I have a special guest with me today. My 5-year-old daughter Mariner is. I'm also a kindergarten teacher at the moment. I'm not really actually a kindergarten teacher at all, but because of the closures of school, I'm forced to be one, and I'm doing my best. So she's very honored to be able to listen in too. So I ran for district attorney. The election was in 2018, and it was not the first office I ran for. The first office I ran for was class president in the 5th grade, and I lost by 1 vote. But I picked myself back up and ran for school board a few years ago, and then in 2018, November, I was elected district attorney. So district attorneys in Maine have to be, there are 2 qualifications. You have to be admitted to the Maine bar. So you have to have gone to law school, taken the bar exam, and passed in Maine. Pass the bar exam in Maine, you can go to law school anywhere in the country. And secondly, you have to be from the, not from, but you have to live in the district you're running for. So I live in Waldoboro, and I ran for this office, and I won the seat. I was the first woman to win the seat in the entire history of District 6. Before that, the history runs back to 1971. Before that, there were county attorneys, and there's never been a female county attorney in Lincoln County. So I found that shocking, but it was a real opportunity. And some of the perspectives that I think women bring to the prosecutorial job. So prosecutors, what we do is we charge people with crimes. We work with the police who investigate crimes, and we charge folks with crimes. And the platform I ran on was to use more restorative justice instead of jail and prison to change behavior. And also on the other side of that, to also start prosecuting more domestic violence and sexual assault, regardless of the victim. And so those are the types of things that I think women in my position, when you look at a prosecutor who's deciding who to charge and what to charge them with, having a woman's perspective, especially nowadays with what we know about sexual assault and domestic violence, it's a really important voice to have. So yeah, that's what I do.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So let me ask both of you, like, why did you decide to run for office? I mean, you've talked a little bit about this, but I'd love to hear from each of you, like, why you decided to run and how did you feel ready? So,
I can start. Yeah, so I actually did not run. This is not my first time running too for city council. I ran for a school committee at large, and a school committee at large, that position is like a mayor's position, so it's like the citywide. And I was running against an incumbent. I was a senior at USM. I was working full-time at an LLB making bean boots. I was very busy and also going, yeah, full-time student. And I decided to run because why not? And a lot of people told me, you know, I wasn't ready. It wasn't my time. I will not make it. You know, they had so many doubts because I had no experience. I didn't have the support. I didn't know anyone in politics. I didn't have any money, so I really did not raise anything. And it was, I got late into the race. So, but what made me really run was because I was really passionate and motivated for my community, especially for you know, the school district. We have 25% of Black and brown kids, new Mainers, and there's no representation in any level of government or on the seat at the table. No one is speaking for them, and representation matters. So come election day, though, I lost big time. I got 3,000 votes, but I didn't give up. That wasn't it for me. I came back again because those 3,000 people believed in me. And if I sat back down and I said, and if I gave up, what happens to those 3,000 people who believed in me and went out of their way and voted for me, right? So what happened next is that I decided to get into different committees, municipal committees, different boards. I got onto Emerge Maine. It's a program that trains Democratic women to run for office. I started, you know, learning the different people in the community. Janet Mills, our governor, did a training for us about how to knock doors. So that's amazing. So yeah, and then I also worked at the State House as a committee clerk for the Labor and Housing Committee for Shanna Bellows and Mike Sylvester. So I try to, you know, plug in anywhere that I can. I became the executive committee member on the Maine Democratic Party. I became the vice chair of the Lewiston Democratic Party. So different things that I can do, I try to, you know, plug in and do and be part of. And then come 2019, I signed up to, you know, I got my papers for the city council, and I had so many people again come to me and said, it's not your time yet. They recommended me to run for school committee again, especially my opponent. And they said, you know, it's not your time. You're really young. You don't know this area. You shouldn't, you know, all of that. And I was like, nope. My time is overdue. You know, I'm gonna do this. So, and I think that's what really forced me to do like extra and work really hard, because of there's so many doubts that was coming at my way. So my Emerge graduation, I announced that I was running in March of 2019, and since that day, I started knocking doors. I knocked over like 2,000 doors. So that was like a lot of people that I talked to, and I raised, you know, money, good amount of money, and I got a lot of volunteers, and people started seeing what I was doing and the message that I was putting out there. And I met so many amazing people that I never met before, that welcomed me into their homes, that I had like hours of conversation with them, and that it got really dark, that offered me, you know, food and coffee and all of this. So they're amazing. But and that was what, you know, got me up every day to knock more doors. It was really exhausting. My body took a big toll, and when I'm stressed and anxious, like, it shows in my body. But every day I went back because I, you know, got to talk to more amazing people. Lewiston is just full of amazing, wonderful, welcoming people, and that's what I got to talk to every day. And come election day, I won more than close to 70% of the vote, and that was just very historical. And I wasn't really looking at the labels too, being the first Somali woman getting elected to an office, or even just, yeah, an immigrant woman. And I wasn't really looking at that. I was looking at the message more, and that's what came through. The passion, you know, and the love I have for the community showed on Tuesday night, and I'm just so grateful for them, honestly. Yeah, sorry I took too much time, but did I answer the question? Is there, oh, good, I did. Okay, awesome.
No, it's so exciting, and you probably can't follow along with the chat while you are talking, but people love your story. You're amazing, so strong, love you, just go. So anyway, thank you for sharing that. I was going to jump over to DA Irving, but I understand that Representative Maxmin is in the room, so I don't see you yet. But Representative Maxmin, if you are here and unmuted, we'd love for you to say hello and introduce yourself, and tell folks quickly about your district and what the role of a state representative is.
Sure. Hello, everyone. My name is Kelli McCannell. I live in Nobleboro. I'm so excited to be here with you all today. And Natasha and Safiya are two incredible women, so it's an honor to be associated with them. I am the state representative for District 88, which is Chelsea, Whitefield, Jefferson, and half of Nobleboro, for anybody who cares. I'm serving in my first term right now. I was elected in 2018. I represent around 9,000 people. I am the first Democrat to represent my district, and I serve as the youngest woman in the House right now.
Nice. Safiya was just sharing a little bit about how she decided to run for office. If you want to share a bit about how you made that decision.
Definitely. So I have the one thing that's been pretty consistent about me for my whole life is that I really love Maine. I love Maine a lot, and my whole life has just been about how I like make meaning and build my life here in Maine and fight for our communities and our homes and where we've come from. And that path has taken me to many different places as I try and figure out what that means to fight for Maine. But the biggest way that I've done that is through community organizing. So just talking with people and fighting for what we deserve in our communities, whether that's healthcare or climate justice or education reform. So through all of my organizing though in communities, one of the biggest things that I began to see is that so much of what we talk about when we talk about a better world has to do with policy. And the people that are creating our policy are the people that are on our ballots every November. And we just, like, for some reason, there's just not a whole lot of attention paid to who we elect and how they campaign and how they get elected and how they represent us and what does that mean to represent people. And therefore, we just keep electing folks who don't really reflect the voices of our communities and who just keep repeating the same patterns that leave us behind. So I decided to run for office and try and do politics a little bit differently. That was really based around values and not around party. That was really trying to create a slightly more hopeful path forward. And I didn't know if we would win or not, but to me it was just about there's got to be a better way forward through politics. So So I ran.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. I love hearing that. DA Irving, I feel I'm torn. I'm used to using people's formal titles when I'm working with them, but also this feels more like everybody's just friends. So sorry if I'm going back and forth. But
you can call me Natasha, and everybody is, you know, can call me Natasha. DA Irving is fine too, but you know, usually only if you're in trouble.
It's because, you know, as my role sort of representing an organization at the State House, it's more formal for me in that way. But then, of course, you know, here we are, we're like having coffee together. So anyway, you want to talk a little bit about why you decided to run and how you felt ready, or if you felt ready?
Yeah, sure. So when I ran, I had been an attorney for I think 4 years. So that's very, you know, especially in rural Maine, that's like not being an attorney, right? Like I hadn't been an attorney for very long. But I had experience working as a labor organizer and as a community organizer. And I had actually worked at the State House as a committee clerk at one point. So I knew how, laws were made, and I also had worked for the Democratic Party. So I worked in politics, helping people get elected. And I thought, you know, if you see something that needs to be fixed, then somebody has to stand up and be the one to fix it. And there's no about standing up. And there was nothing that led me to believe I couldn't do the job. I was an attorney just like anyone else that was practicing. And what I saw day in and day out in the criminal world, because part of what I did was as a criminal defense attorney, I saw that my clients who were all appointed, they were court-appointed cases because they were people that were very poor, and that the majority of cases that were at court were poor people, and that people were going to jail every day for things like shoplifting, and sometimes for shoplifting things like I had a client that shoplifted baby Orajel because she couldn't buy it with food stamps, her SNAP benefits, and she didn't have any money to buy baby Orajel for her infant who was teething, and she had been convicted of theft in the past. So she was looking at prison time. She didn't go to prison, but she went to jail for something like 3 months. So I had case after case of every client of mine was mentally ill, was very, very poor, was maybe addicted to drugs and mentally ill. And I just thought it was insane. The office of the district attorney was saying these people needed to go to jail to change their behavior. And I thought it was pretty obvious these people needed housing, medication, treatment for an illness. Mariner, can you stop doing that, please? In order to change their behavior. So I had to run. It was really a matter of basic human rights. And my belief was that when you had somebody who committed a shoplifting, there's a victim there, right? The shop owner. But what does that victim really need? They need to be made whole. They need restitution. And it would be better to have somebody do community service and pay back the restitution than to go to jail, which wasn't helping anybody. Now, on the other side of that, I had clients in the family world, in the civil world, through protection from abuse orders, criminal clients in the criminal world who were mostly women who had been sexually assaulted. And when they had reported, their cases were prosecuted. And their cases were prosecuted, I believe, because they had a criminal record or because they were addicted to drugs. And they were suspected as either not telling the truth or that the jury wouldn't believe them if they told their story. And you can't prove a he said, she said is what, you know, would always be, oh, well, it wasn't charged because it was a he said, she said. And I just found that to be backwards. I found it to be sexist. My belief was that if a man was sexually assaulted, that nobody would be asking what he did to deserve it, put himself in this situation. And I would not stand for that any longer. So that's why it wasn't just that I felt like I could run and win. It was like, you know, I felt very strongly that I needed to be in that office in order to change really what was happening on the ground with people's basic human rights. So that's why I ran. And if you do what Chloe did, and if you do what Councilor Khalid did, going out and knocking on doors day in and day out until you're physically ill from it, you will win the office.
And hopefully
Here, you need to mute that.
doesn't have to make us sick, right? Like,
No. It's great to knock on doors. I also want to, it's also really wonderful to knock on doors, but it is a very busy thing to do by the end. But it's like doing anything challenging. You do it and you put your nose to the grindstone. Nothing happens without hard work. And it's really, really rewarding.
Yeah. Thank you. So I'm going to ask another question, but while we do a roundabout, if folks in the room have a question for our panelists, you can go ahead and type those in, and Logan's going to keep his eyes peeled on the chat box. So I wanted to ask each of you, you know, we know that more men than women run for office, and even when women do, you know, they win their elections about as often as men, but you're still going into an environment that is overwhelmingly with other men as policymakers, as elected officials. And if you would just talk for a minute about if that changes your role as an elected official now, like what does that mean for you now? And maybe it doesn't mean anything. Maybe it just feels like business as usual, but I'd love to hear from you about how that is to be in an overwhelmingly male environment. Maybe we'll start with you, Safiya. Oh, you are muted. There we go.
Thank you. So being in a, I mean, women have naturally, I was doing some research the other day about why women are, you know, more depressed than men, and you know, it's just society itself puts a lot on us, unfortunately, and whether that's judgments, whether that's responsibilities and roles, and societal norms is really frustrating. So so maybe that's one reason why men think that they can run more than women can, because of, especially if they have kids and at-home responsibilities, and even on top of that with job and work, and all of that in family too, depending on the culture and the tradition. That's also another whole story that we can get into another day. But so there's, you know, just society itself is honestly the problem. And I'm sorry, what was the other question? What was the other part?
Being in an environment now that you're an elected official that is overwhelmingly male, how does that feel?
Yeah.
Does it change how you do?
No, it's tiring, honest. But right now on the city council, there's how many? There's, you know, 2 women, including myself, and 5 men. Which is really sad, honestly. But and it's hard trying to always talk and like say something where they think they know everything, which they don't, of course, but they think they do. And so it's frustrating. So you have to learn to just like control and just speak out loud anytime. Like what I've noticed, especially on the council, is that sometimes men just say something because they want to say something, and that doesn't add value to the conversation or to the topic. So where I come from is like you have to like always speak your mind, and if you have something that you want to say, please say it loud, especially for the ones in the back. Just say it really loud so that we can all hear you, and regardless of how often other people talk, just own the space and own the room. It is hard. It's especially for me as a young person who's trying to get into politics and is in an environment who's, you know, dominated by men. I'm learning to be very assertive and like say no and speak out loud and demand what I want. And it's a learning process, especially if you have not been taught from a young age. So yeah, it's honestly a learning process, but we can all do it. Yeah.
Right. Chloe, do you want to share a little bit about what it's like to be a woman elected official in an overwhelmingly male environment?
Yeah, it's such a good question, and something that is really good to have female spaces to talk about it in. I mean, campaigning and being in office are obviously connected, but they're such radically different experiences, and in some cases just take very different skill sets. And so I feel like the way that people see me as a candidate and the way that people see me as an elected person are very different. I mean, on the campaign trail, it's just, yeah, I found it really prevalent. Like, you're too young, you're not qualified, you don't have a family, so you don't have any responsibility. And just like this persistent doubt that women and young folks can be in office and represent everybody. Like, our identities are too narrow to represent everybody or something like that, which is not true. And yeah, like, have people, saying like, you're too audacious, you shouldn't be running, and all of that kind of stuff. But whatever, people are going to say what they're going to say. And then it's I find I didn't really mind the sexism on the campaign trail, because it's just unfortunately part of our society, and you push back against it and you can talk with people about it. But being in office is yeah, I mean, like yesterday or the day before yesterday, I was on a call like this with all students on a panel, and I've sponsored a bill on climate change that had a big chunk to do with solar policy, and there was a solar policy expert who was just explaining my bill to everybody, and I was like raising my hand and trying to explain it, and he just explained it to everybody without saying that it was my bill, and just completely took credit for it. And I was like, what the heck is going on? Or like, there was a time when I, on the same bill, this bill's brought me a lot of trouble, but the same bill, when it was being voted on in the House, I stood up to give my floor speech, and a series of men interrupted me 4 times, 30 seconds apart, to try and get me to stop talking about climate change. And so, it's there, but I, you like come out this work, or at least I come out this work from, acknowledging that that's there, finding like my power and solidarity in different places and different spaces, and being so inspired by everyone around me. Like, Safiya is one of the most incredible people in Maine, and we just push on besides all of that. And there's lots of benefits to it besides getting yelled at.
Natasha, do you want to add to that conversation?
Sure. I'm glad that this is a question, because one of the things I wanted to make sure I said was that I want everyone to I'm smiling when I say this, but we live in a sexist world, and to brace yourself for the fact that that you're going to encounter it, and it is, as Councilor Khalid said, it's tiring. I mean, I find it exhausting. And I also, what I've done recently is, especially since I've taken office, I'm the chief law enforcement officer in 4 counties. So if somebody wants to talk smack about me, I let them do it. And it happens quite a bit, but I'm not going to defend, I feel like at this point I won't defend myself against absolutely baseless claims. And I'll just give you a couple examples of the things that I've experienced. I had done an interview with Bangor Daily News about our sexual assault policy, and that we would investigate all claims, and that we would move forward with charges if we had a survivor that was willing to move forward, and if we believed that that through the investigation that this event had occurred, right? Because that is literally how we prosecute every other crime. Did the crime occur? Is the victim or the witness able to testify? That's all. So I was attacked in national media, right-wing media in Maine, and by the defense bar in Maine for being naive, for being stupid, for not knowing the law, and it was disappointing. But one of the things that brought me so much, it brought me back to the world, was that a defense counsel came to my aid, and we sat down, we had coffee together, and she says, it's because you're a feminist and I'm a feminist, and we get it. You know, we both get what sexual assault is and why it needs to be prosecuted. And so knowing that you have allies is, you know, that you have other women, we might be the minority in some of these fields, but standing together with the sisterhood is so important. And I will add one more anecdote. The other end of this is that at one point I was working on a case, and one of the victims, or of the case, in the case, her sister had been the victim. I mentioned I have a little girl at home, and she said, oh, how can you do this and be a mom of a 5-year-old? And I said, well, I have a partner, and and he does a lot of the work, luckily. But my predecessor also, he has 2 kids, and I didn't tell her, nobody asked how he did his job, but as a mom, you get those questions too. And I know all of you, probably a lot of you aren't moms, but the idea that we can't walk and chew gum at the same time, or that just because we have children means that it is our sole duty to be at home with them, or we're bad parents. It's just the kind of thing that you encounter, and you have, as Chloe said, you have to push back. And I think that the biggest thing to do is to remember we have to stand with our sisters, and we have to stand against inequality. But we also have to call it out, and we have to really speak truth when we hear those things, because eventually people will start to get the message that we can walk and chew gum at the same time.
Nice. Awesome. All right, so folks have been chatting in a few questions, and I think Logan's got them written down. I think we'll try to maybe do a little bit of a lightning round so that we can get through a bunch of these questions. So, we'll make sure that everybody gets a chance to answer, but, with 3 to 5 sentences, if you don't mind. And that way we can kind of plow through a bunch of stuff. So Logan, do you have a question for us?
Absolutely. First off, this chat has just been like fire, start to finish, loving it. But a great question to start with was, it is directed at all 3 of you. What has motivated you to keep going when things aren't always easy?
All right. Take it away.
I can start. What motivated me? That is my community, Lewiston. I love the city. I've lived here since I was 7 years old, and I've seen a lot of changes happen. Some for good, some not so good. And personally, for me, there's been a lot of racist rhetoric in the government position in Lewiston, especially in the local, where we had a mayor that said horrible things, just not people who should not be in office, unfortunately held office. And that's what I wanted to push back on and say, no, this is not what our city is about. So that they were my biggest motivators. So your haters are your biggest motivators. That's what I wanted to say.
Your pin. Chloe, what helps you keep going when things are hard?
There's literally one phrase that I say to myself, which is that you can never stop fighting for what you love. That depth and infinite quality of love is so much stronger and more powerful than any of the hate or the bad things. So I just come home to my dog and my family and the people that I love, and you go from there.
Awesome. Thank you. And Natasha?
One of my favorite things to say is get in line. You don't like it? Get in line, because you do get naysayers, and it's really easy to criticize. So I relish what, and I often say, well, if you disagree with me, I'm not doing anything right. And whether I say it or whether I think it very strongly, that the haters they give me a lot of motivation. But the other end of that is that I know that women have to do this work. And if we don't do this work, then somebody else is going to be doing it, and they're going to be doing it in the way that it's been done for the last 10,000 years. And I think we've tried that. So let's try something.
Nice. All right, Logan, what's next?
All right, a bit of a two-part question. First, just what does it feel like when you finally do get into office? And then the follow-up, because we've talked about how being in an election can be a really difficult experience, do things get easier once you actually hold that elected position and you've won that election?
Nice. So how did it feel, and does it get easier?
For me, when I was being sworn in, I was like very anxious because I didn't know like how will this look like. But after, you know, a couple of meetings, it was, you know, very straightforward, you know, reading packages and doing this and doing that. So and like me being there at the table, it made me realize how important the position I was holding and where I am, and a little bit surprised that we really did not have someone with my experience and someone with my background at the table, advocating for the interest of the entire community. So and it honestly felt really great, and you know, like it was a privilege. It is a privilege that I hold this position.
Chloe?
Yeah, I mean, I remember the moment like leading up to the election results. I was like, oh gosh, I hope I don't get it. I think it's going to be really hard, and I'm not really sure that I want this anymore. I was literally saying that on election night. But I won. And I mean, it's changed me in really big ways that I represent people now. And so I really have to be careful about what I say online and how I dress when I go to the grocery store. And, you know, there's like this extra level to it, which I really, it's an honor, you know, and I take that very seriously. So it's made me grow up a lot, I think, and also just really understand the responsibility that I have to represent my people, but also to do things differently. And I think, I mean, the things that you face that are tough, those things don't get easier to see, but you get stronger. You know, there are things that happen to me now that if they happened to me a couple years ago would have ruined my day, but now I'm like, whatever, you know. And so you become a stronger human being, and you can see them for these bad things for what they are, and you just keep doing the work. And I feel like I just wanted to say that I don't want to dwell on the negative stuff too much, because there's so much beauty in our communities, and what it means to run for office and what it means to be in office that is just like so much better than any of the bad stuff.
Nice. Natasha, how did it feel, and did it get better?
It felt really good. I was up very late, which didn't feel good, but felt very good. When I got the call, like the concession call, I felt, I'm sorry, you know, I felt really bad because I felt bad for my opponent. But taking office, it feels really powerful. I will say, you feel kind of the responsibility and the power of the position. And what that's done for me is, like the other women said, is that it reminds me every day of who I'm fighting for, why I did this, why I took this responsibility, and so for me it's been a everyday reflection about why I'm doing this. And I will say, there are things that are easier about being in office, but running for office, it's like running a marathon. It's not easy, but it's really, really rewarding. And there is something to be said for talking to constituents that really deserve a voice. This is a democracy, and just like the other woman said, it is a privilege to be in office and to be able to listen to those voices. So it's different, but it's not. It's different, but both are definitely challenging things to do.
Nice. You have another one for us, Logan.
Yes, I do. First off, Natasha, your daughter has a ton of fans now, so it's been awesome. We hope to see her at another Girls' Day as well. So this next question is really good. It might take just like more on that 5 sentences than 3 to 5, but what do you do to represent all of the people that you are meant to be representing? As mentioned earlier, every person's experiences will differ. How do you represent citizens whose experiences you cannot relate to? Which is just like a dynamite question. Yeah, so.
That's excellent, thanks. Let's, we'll shift a little. Chloe, maybe we could start with you, if you don't mind.
Yeah, that's a huge question, and I honestly haven't figured out the answer yet. I mean, so even though I identify more with values than with party, I am a Democrat, and only 23% of my district are registered Democrats. So that means the vast majority of the people that I represent hold slightly to vastly different political views than I do, but we unite around our values. So I think one of the hardest things being in office has been trying to understand what your community thinks. I thought it would be like pretty apparent to get a sense of what people are thinking on a bill or an issue, but it's really hard because people only contact you if they're like really extremely on one side or the other. And there's like all these special interest groups as well, like getting people to send you automated emails. So you might get like 50 emails on one bill that you're voting on that day, but I represent 9,000 people. So are those 50 people representative? So, so kind of where I've netted out with this process and representing all these different views is that I got elected with 52% of the vote. So there's 40% of people who won't agree with me, and that's okay. I'll still represent them and I'll still communicate with them as best as I can. I spend most of my time talking with my constituents, doing coffee with Chloe's, one-on-one meetings, going to local events, just being as present as I can so that we can, instead of having it be such a heated thing about we're coming from very different places and have very different opinions on this, we can have like a kind in-person conversation about what we think and why we agree or disagree. Also, it's human nature to disagree on things, and I really don't like this narrative that you always have to agree 100% with the person that you elect. But I think what should be expected is that the person that you elect should be there to have a transparent, honest, and kind conversation with you about what you're thinking.
That's great. I love that. Natasha, do you want to go next?
Sure. I have a rooster that's about to crow. So I have an experience. My first year in office, which this is only my second year, but there was a person that had been in the legislature. Please stop, honey. That had been in the legislature that was a Republican. He was in my district, and he was a very red Republican, and he had been charged with. Can you hold on one second? Billy, what are you doing? Can you please go in the other room? Okay, I'm on a conference, please. Sorry, my spouse just got home and he was taking his shirt off in the living room. I'm sorry, everybody. This is what happens with Zoom. That usually doesn't happen,
but this is real talk, right? This is like
this is real. Yeah, this is my life. So I reviewed the charge. He'd been charged before I took office, and I reviewed the charge, and I reviewed the evidence, and I did not think that I did not think it was likely we would win a trial. I thought the evidence was quite weak, and it was also a Class E misdemeanor. So under the policy, it was clear I needed to try and work out some sort of a restorative process, and what we had worked out was that he was going to make in the amount that the fine would have been, he was going to make a charitable contribution to a conservation organization. He did that, and I dismissed the charge. And I got a lot of blowback from Democrats, that are my allies. And it's when you take these offices, whatever the office is, you have this responsibility to do your very best. And in my job, I have to do justice. So in that case, to me, it was a no-brainer. It was a no-brainer that, this person is very different than me. His ideals are probably about as far off from mine as possible. But we're talking about a serious criminal, you know, every criminal charge is serious, and every human being, no matter what their political party, no matter, you know, no matter what, deserves to be treated the same. So that was an easy one for me. And I know that every time we look at certain issues like that, protesters who are really left-wing protesters who I agree with their message versus right-wing protesters who I don't agree with their message, but it is my job to treat every single person the same, and I really take pride in that. And I really, really take pride in that. So thank you guys.
Great, that's so good. Do you have things to add to that, Safiya? How do you represent folks that don't share the same experience you do?
Sure. So my entire campaign, I ran on communication and understanding, you know, across all people of the city. And for me, it's, you know, about finding common ground. Yeah, we may not be from the same party. We may not all the time understand each other and agree on things, but let's find the common ground, and, you know, build on our values, and, like, you know, look at the bigger picture, which is bettering Lewiston for, you know, for the best.
Great. And, you know, I think that's an interesting, I just think, as you said, you're the first Somali American to represent your district, a district that's like 10 to 15% new Mainers. And so nobody was all that concerned for the, you know, 100 years before about representing, you know, well, what if I don't understand the experience of Somali Americans? And they were running for office anyway. So I just think that's really important and useful to keep in mind. I'm sure you keep it in mind all the time. This is all so good. We have about 5 more minutes for this segment. So I thought I might just ask you to wrap up, each of you, if you would, with, you know, your words of advice to your own 8th grade self. Like, if you could have that conversation now, talking to the Chloe of before, to the Natasha and Safiya of before, what would you say to yourself looking back? And maybe Natasha, if you want to kick it off there, we'll swap up the order.
Thanks. You know, I think what I would tell myself is that, you know, you shouldn't sweat the small stuff, and that if you're doing something because it's the right thing to do, and you're doing something from a good place in your heart to make the world better, then you have to do it. And you should never, ever doubt yourself. I told you guys about my 5th grade election, and that really, you know, might sound like a 5th grade election, but it really hurt. And it kind of scarred me for years, whether I would have the confidence to run again. But I did, and you know, win or lose, we do this because it's the right thing to do. And I just want to remind myself, my 8th grade self, to never, ever doubt your ability to do it. And to never worry about what other people think if you're doing it from that place of trying to make the world a better place.
Nice. Safiya, how about you?
Thank you. My advice to my younger self is, you know, to persist, and you know, don't give up. And especially, there's going to be a lot of people who that doubt you, your ability, what you can do, what you cannot do, all of that. And I remember times in the campaign trail where I honestly just cried because of like the horrible things people have said about me and the attacks that I got. And I was like, wait, is this even like for me? And I guess it was for me. So I didn't listen to them. So yeah, my advice is to continue to push forward, and as long as you yourself believe in in, you know, in your abilities to do something, then that's all that matters.
That's wonderful. I'm slightly distracted by the Logan fan club happening in the chat right now. There has also been a Safiya fan club, a Chloe fan club, Natasha. We are, it's nothing but fans and stands today. All right. And the last advice to your 8th grade self, I think, Chloe.
Yeah, I would tell myself to not allow what I think the world should be to be the world that I allow myself to live in. Because the way that, I never ever thought that I would run for office. I never saw myself as that kind of person. Like literally until the day before I decided to run, I was like, if I run, I'm going to do it in my 30s when I'm married, and like it'll be the end of my career because I'm too young right now, and I haven't gone to law school, and I haven't gone to a local Democrats meeting ever, and I had all of these reasons why it wasn't the right time or the right fit for me. But then I realized that life is short, and that we got to do the things that we got to do right now, and that like so much of the narrative that we're told about what it means to run for office and what you need to do and what it looks like is just wrong, because it's created by people in power who want you to not run. And so just like really pushing back against those narratives and pushing down those barriers that we're told, and just creating your own path forward.
Yeah, that really hits home for me. I mean, nobody asked me, and I'm not here to give my opinion, but that for me is, I waited for a long time to know more, to have more things on my resume, to have completed more tasks. And I look back and think, what was I waiting for? Just do it. And then that's the task that you'll complete, and you'll figure it out. Other people just do it. They're not waiting around. So any last thoughts that we want to share before we move along from the panel? Or maybe you feel you've each shared your final parting words, but I don't want to shut you off.
I just want to say that that Kelly, her presentation, that was amazing. And I also want to say that all the girls here are really inspiring, and they are going to be the next state legislators, city councilors, the next president, the next district attorney. And I'm so proud of each and every one of you that are taking this step.
Nice, thank you. Safiya or Chloe, any parting words?
I just want to quickly say that Kelly's presentation and the whole group chat, even when then like looking at the facts and the stats, where like women is, the numbers are very, very low, and then it was just like emotional roller coaster looking at that. It's like, yay, no, yay. So, that just tells us how much we need to be really involved and say no, because our time is, it's our time. It has been our time for a long time. So please, believe in yourselves and continue to, move forward.
Nice.
And I would just like to, I know I missed the first part of it, but from just seeing the chat and all your faces, y'all are incredible humans, and it's just an honor to be part of the conversation with you.
Thank you. Thank you all so much. I feel super inspired and motivated, and I'm thrilled that we could do this. I really appreciate your time, because I know you're all busy. So big round of applause. Yay, panelists. And now I want to take just a couple of minutes, because Logan has made our Girls' Day website live. So I'm going to share my screen, and we will head over to mainwomen.org, and you will see here under the Education Fund, Maine Women's Lobby Education Fund, Programs, Girls' Day. You can also just search for Maine Women's Lobby Ed Fund Girls' Day. But this is the full collection of all of our resources. So this video will be live or will be embedded in here, obviously not right this moment, but then you can go ahead, and if you missed Governor Mills' welcome speech, you can see that. that. And there's through a PowerPoint, but I try to be funny. There's a conversation with Maine lobbyists. We've got a day in the life of a committee chair, an interview with the Maine House clerk, a conversation about the role that money plays in politics. I see that my video, I'm gonna stop my own video and that might help. All right, okay, great. So, good deal. All right, so we've got a bunch of resources here about the legislative process, the role of lobbying, committee chair work, behind the scenes with the House clerk, money in politics, and you'll also see on the side a whole bunch of ways that you can get involved too. So right over on the right-hand side, if a lot of you might already be familiar with Flipgrid, if you're not, it's super easy to use. So you can go ahead and click right through to our Flipgrid page. Let's see if it lets me actually come over to a new tab. Yeah, so we've got a couple different prompts for Flipgrid. So you can do little tiny videos of yourself, either from your computer or your phone. Kind of questions for legislators, what issues you care about, how you're already working to make change in the world. So you can share those videos there. You can watch the videos from this group. You probably will recognize some names because you'll have seen everybody now in this session. And also don't forget that next week, down here, we've got 2 more live sessions. So a community organizing panel. If you're interested in how you can start taking action right now for organizing your community, you can join us for that live session. And we've got a Q&A with Maine legislators. So a collection of legislators, some of whom are new, some of whom have been in the State House for a long time. And you can just ask all the questions of them. So we have a ton of different resources for you. And we really want to make sure that you feel like if you didn't actually get to go to the State House, at least you get to connect, you get to learn, you get to connect with each other. So take those selfies with your t-shirts, send them on Instagram and Snap. Oh yeah, I see some t-shirts there, nice. If you didn't get one, let us know and we'll try to send them out. But send those selfies and hashtag Virtual Girls Day. Grace, yeah. Addison, Maddie, so good. And to stay connected with us online and stay connected with us too through our organization. You know, you can come to the State House and shadow us even if you missed the live in-person Girls Day. I think that's everything. Logan, did I miss anything?
It was just, you didn't miss anything, but just things that I wanted to point out. As you did say, we do have 2 more live sessions happening, which we're super excited about. I have been emailing people pretty much like every day almost at this point too. But just, you know, make sure that you log into that. And also we have been so, like, we really didn't know how this session was going to go. We've been so excited about how much everyone is engaging with each other. We did for previous Girls' Days have like a private Facebook page that we set up. And it's definitely clear to me that we need to figure out a way to make sure that everybody can stay in contact with each other. So stay tuned. The contact is not going to all go away once the Zoom chat is closed, but we'll work on that. So just so you know, it's just been like so thrilling seeing everybody chiming in and being such active participants. It's just everything we could hope for. So thank you all.
And I see one request for a group selfie. So I'm going to go ahead and ask you all to say hi, and I'm gonna snag a picture. Awesome. I think I caught most of you, so this is so excellent. Oh, we're even voguing back there. All right, I'm gonna let y'all go, but I cannot wait to see you online, and I'll see you next week. We'll all see you next week, so woo! Have a great day.
Bye.
Yay.